and welcome to the final week of LCS Proving Grounds presented by Verizon. My name's LaTigris, and I am oh so delighted to be joined today by Kelsey Moser and Smacks for our Best of 5 series. So good to see y'all. Smacks, I want to get your thoughts first. You've been casting these games thus far throughout Proving Grounds. What do you make of the fact that we have finally made it to the final week?
Oh, I'm so excited for this last week here, LaTigris. We have with us today the upper bracket finals, Cloud9 Academy versus No Org. And these are the first place teams of Academy and the first place teams of Amateur duking it out. I couldn't have scripted it better myself if I tried.
Right? It's exactly what we as fans of this scene want. Top amateur team versus the top academy team. Kelsey, you're such a staple within the developmental system. What do you make of the journey thus far and finally getting to this point yourself?
You kind of had a feeling that this would be the rivalry at the start of Proving Grounds, that this would be the way that we'd end up. Both of these teams, there were some hiccups here and there from C9 especially, but I would say that they both kind of blew through their sides of the bracket pretty convincingly. And we ended up here today with, I think, what I can only be perceived as a very iconic matchup across the board. So.
Yeah, I am so excited to dive even deeper into all of those matchups between these two teams after what they have displayed thus far this season. But after these weeks of competition that we have witnessed, the playoff picture is almost complete. Tomorrow, Evil Geniuses Academy will face off against 100 Thieves Academy to see who will stay alive in our lower bracket. But today, Cloud9 Academy are taking on No Org to see who will snag a guaranteed spot in our final on Sunday and who will have to battle it out in the lower bracket. All of you watching, as you heard from our analysts, this is definitely a match that you have to keep your eyes on. So let's start talking about it, starting with the top lane. We've got two LCS veterans at this point, Darshan and Viper. They're facing off, Kelsey, and I think it's going to be a good matchup.
If you're a big Academy fan, then you expect to see Darshan the past 2 years really taking initiative and being played around on his side of the map. But I think that that's more of No Org's identity. You have Viper playing so many different champions, of course, across a larger sample size, but you've got the Callista, you've got a lot of different AD type champions that he's going to be taking a lot of initiative to snowball. It's very common for No Org to look for split map scenarios around top lane. They consistently want to go for, the stacked 3-wave, 4-wave dive on the enemy top laner and take over the game from there. Darshan, on the other hand,
Darshan, he has played Vayne, so you don't want to count that out completely. He has played the carries up in that top lane too, but yes, that is mostly Viper.
Exactly, with that shared champ pool right there in the middle. One of these things is not like the other. The Vayne definitely standing out a bit there. But Kelsey, you're talking a bit more about this matchup between Darshan and Viper. Viper clearly being a very focal point of his team.
Yeah, Viper very easily a focal point. So I think what's really going to have to happen for Cloud9 to succeed in the early game is for Darshan to be able to thin out those waves, prevent himself from being snowballed on, and then play more of that kind of almost, as we say, weak side top lane, but play it well. When I hear people talk about weak side top lane, they often say, just give the wave, just hold it. But sometimes you got to make those smart HP trades. You've got to get the waves thin, and you've got to make it through the game that way.
That's something that's very important to highlight in this case, Smacks. It takes a lot of skill not just to be a carry for your team, but on that weak side play.
And for Darshan up there, like I said, he has played a few of these carries, but we are primarily seeing a lot of tanks out of him, and some sort of unorthodox ones as well, not leaning more on the Scion like many other top laners. He has shown some priority on the Ornn up in that top lane, so upgrading some of his teammates' items to have that late game power spike that we like to see from Cloud9.
So the top lane, that's one place that people can be keeping their eyes on. Of course, another player that will keep their eyes towards top. You got to look at the junglers and how that will be coming into effect soon enough. I mean, No Org's aggression is in huge part because of Viper, but also because of what Anda brings to the table. And facing off against a great jungler on the other side, Surenfire, I mean, Smacks, another place that we have to be monitoring.
Yeah, for this jungle position, I think this is the one where everyone's really going to have their eyes glued to where these two players are going to be positioning and pathing towards in that early game. Like Kelsey mentioned, and like we saw in that clip, Anda really likes to go for this top side split where he's giving Viper a huge amount of priority, and he likes to do that on AP champions like the Nidalee that we're seeing this graphic, and the Elise as well has been one that he has shown priority on as well. But Surenfire is no stranger to the AP champions too. We've recently seen a lot of Lilia games from him too, and we got to see him just take over the map and take over all of the enemy camps with that champion as well.
Yeah, we're keeping our eyes on those picks. Go ahead, Kelsey.
Absolutely, a lot of priority on those carry champions we're seeing out. I think for me, this is just a really huge matchup because we're talking about on Anda, we're talking about Surenfire, and these are players who have had brief stints in the LCS before, but I would say both of them kind of in unfavorable circumstances. And this is really where we've seen them pop off quite a bit for their teams and demonstrate that they're definitely worth a second look for a lot of these LCS organizations.
And in the playoffs where it matters. We are only a few minutes away from that exact rumble in the jungle, but let's go ahead and check in with our casters. We've got Mad Magical and Crumbs standing on by. Gentlemen?
Thank you so much, Tigers, and our analysts on the analyst desk. It is good to be here. I'm so excited to be getting underway momentarily for our first best of 5 to start off the winner's bracket. But I'm joined in by the one and only Big Brain himself. It's Crumbs, and we really want to be able to dive into how Cloud9 like to operate and see if they can crank it up to 10 with their early game aggression.
Yeah, that early game aggression starts in Champion Select because 4 games in a row they've played the Lucian Lilia combination, the double range, lots of priority in the mid lane, and so they can invade and abuse, in this case, the melee jungle and mid laner of Evil Geniuses. Yes, the supports join up, but the point is that when you're drafting these compositions that take this power so early on against what is an ideally you hit level 6 composition, if you never let them get off the ground, then you can really control the jungle matchup. So it wasn't just about the invade, it was a ward in the pixel brush. It was Surenfire basing immediately after top that already has the Predator boots and can run down the Nocturne out of the jungle. And this kind of punishing got Contract so far behind that he hit level 6 at minute 9. Right here is where it's the first Nocturne ultimate, Panic ults, and now the jungle is entirely over. And this kind of drafting and approach to the game is going to be very important here in a best of 5. We already heard from the desk how important mid and jungle are. Drafting in accordance to having an early game plan will be really critical, because if the jungle is so important, opening a best of series like this can be a really big boost in your morale for your jungler's confidence. And in a game like League of Legends, confidence can really take you the whole way to the victory line.
It really can. And with Cloud9, that victory, it was the fastest game we've had so far in this tournament against Evil Geniuses. Then the next game, you see that Evil Geniuses, they learned. They learned from their mistake, and they were actually able to stop that early aggression from Cloud9.
They did, and they immediately answered the same combination with now the Set and the Talia, so they had a much better way to deal with that pressure, and the game looked a lot closer. So I think that No Org's drafting has been pretty good this entire tournament. We know how flexible they can be, but this is something that they've obviously prepared for, since 4 games in a row should really tell you that Cloud9 is quite practiced with this.
Oh, yeah, they love to play that. And we're going to see if Cloud9 will be able to maintain that early game dominance up against No Org. If No Org is going to say no to Cloud9, be able to fight back against them. We're going to toss it back over to Tigers and the analyst desk so they can break down the series just a little bit more before we get underway.
Thank you, Mad Magical and Crumbs. As our lovely casters were saying, Cloud9, they have been coming in hot with the aggression, as Crumbs highlighted in that early game, which really does a lot, Smacks, in the end, to enable their mid laner in copy.
Yeah, the mid lane is the tale as old as time matchup that I'm super excited for in this one. We have Copy versus Five Fire. And for all of you fans of Scouting Grounds circa 2020 out there, this is a matchup that you are all too familiar with. These two were the mid laners for 100 Thieves Next and a new esports last year in 2020, and they played against each other in the finals of just about every single tournament during that year. So I'm really excited to see how they have adapted and how they've evolved since then, and how they can make that priority work on their teams as well. Like Crumbs was saying, Copy has got a lot of confidence in this Lucian pick that he has played now 4 times in a row in that mid lane paired up with Schernfire's Lilia. And Firefire's got a lot of confidence on things like the Zoe, the Twisted Fate, and the Set, which he can use to get priority mid lane and then push up to top lane to join up with his win condition in the top lane for Viper.
Absolutely. And when we're talking about the aggressive Cloud9, I feel like Nororg pushed the pedal just a little bit more, honestly. And when we're talking about these CF picks, these Zoe picks, we often see Fire rotating with his jungler up into that top side, whereas Copy, I think, is more known for keeping a stable mid priority. So a lot more coordination in terms of snowballing very aggressively coming out of Nororg. And I think mid is going to be very key here.
It's 2 mid laners that many have been tracking throughout the season, despite not seeing them face off against one another really since last year, but we get to do that here today. While earlier we did talk about Viper as a player who commands a lot of resources when it comes to the side of Noorg, though he does deliver big results, let's face it. The same could be said for King when it comes to the bot lane at Kelsey, really from the beginning of what we saw from C9A in the year and now through and through.
When I think about King, I definitely think about the really kind of lane dominant bot laner, the double lift of OPL, if you will, a history of insane amount of dominance. We talk about the oceanic bot laners that we've brought over to NA that have gotten to debut in LCS, and King always seems like the guy who should be next on the list. He's a lot of the people and a lot of the analysts in the world are looking at King as that AD carry that is coming up through Academy, is looking pretty strong. And overall, I would say that the way C9 play, they aren't even that preoccupied with dragon stacking or getting dragons ahead. They want to focus bot lane to get that gold onto King to enable him to carry these team fights and to be really, really far ahead so that to an extent, dragons come into play a little bit less. And I think that could potentially play into Noorg's favor since setting up dragon isn't their biggest strength, but you still have to be able to deal with King to get to a position where you can close out that game.
And those team fights are just so crazy from King as well. We got to see that front and center against Evil Genius's Academy just last week, where Copy was very focused on getting the mid lane opened up with his marksman pick later. It ended up taking a back seat to the center stage role of King on the Sivir and on the Tristana, and just how devastating he could be, specifically on the Tristana late game team fights. Those were a work of art. I still find myself wanting to go back and watch all of those team fights. So that's going to be a player to watch out for as the game moves on into the late game.
With somebody that is so powerful in the late game, you have to be thinking as the opposition, how do we quell that as early as possible? Well, we are moments away from getting into this matchup itself. Before we jump into it, though, we have one final bit of business to take care of. Who's taking the dub and the guaranteed spot in the finals? Kelsey, I'm going to put you up on deck first. Who's taking it?
I went back and forth a lot on this one because I think this looks like a really done deal for most people. You think, okay, first seed in the entire tournament, Cloud9 Academy, but Noorg are super impressive, right? These guys, I spent a lot of time going back and forth deciding who would win. I ultimately ended up with Cloud9 Academy on a 3-1 just because I do think Noorg's mid-game cohesion is not as strong as Cloud9's, and that's ultimately where I'm going with this. I think Noorg will out-accelerate Cloud9 early, but Cloud9 are going to be the ones who, they'll find a way back into those dragon fights. They'll get their resets on time, and that's something that Noorg struggle with a bit more, and I think that really strong AD carry is what's going to pull them through as the game comes down to the wire.
It's really indexing into that strong team play. Yes, Max, are you aligned or are you on the opposite side?
Oh, yeah. I think I am aligned with Kelsey. I was also mulling this over for quite some time, and I am rather surprised that we are agreeing because I think this matchup is so close. I'm going to go with a 3-2 for Cloud9 Academy. I am mostly swayed by King's performance, actually, last week. I think King had the strongest performance of any player in the tournament last week on the Tristana late game team fights. I think he was the linchpin for keeping his team in that game, and I think with a player like Darshan on your roster too, who is very malleable and can play a bunch of different play styles, it really favors what Cloud9 Academy's bot lane wants to do, and I think they are just a little bit favored in this matchup against Noorg.
Okay, so both of our analysts are indexing to the Cloud9 Academy side, though happy to hear, I think, that there are some mixed predictions across the board. Smacks, even on your last podcast, there was a bit of debate around who is going to be taking this series. But without further ado, with our predictions locked away, I think it's time for us to hand things over to the casters, Mad Magical and Crumbs. Take it.
Thank you so much once again, Latigris, Kelsey, and Smacks, for an awesome breakdown of this series. But I will call out both Kelsey and Smacks cowards. No one voting against one another. They're both going Cloud9. Oh, man. What is the amateur community going to say about them? But you know what? It doesn't matter. We'll see how the teams are actually going to be able to perform, because I think it is going to be a close series. I don't know who's going to win, but I do believe that we're going to go to the 5 games. What about you, Crumbs?
I think we are swayed by how beautiful the story would be of a team who quite literally has no org against one of the largest organizations in North America in esports of Cloud9 that has so many resources, incredible scrim partners with the LCS champions this split. So it obviously is a tale when it comes to the backing behind these organizations of David versus Goliath, but the play behind no org has been there. They have actually had a lot of interesting individual skills show, like Viper with his carry performances. But beyond that, I think it's the fact that you also have a lot of veterans here. You have players that have LCS experience, just like in Cloud9, and they're also coached by Zig, who also happens to have played in the LCS. So on paper, it does look like an academy team. If you were to tell me that this is a team in the academy split this year, totally looks entirely like all the others.
And now we jump into Champion Select. We have Cloud9 on blue. And I find this fascinating because Norg has yet to play on red side in this PGC. Obviously, they've played it throughout the multitude of different tournaments across this year. But in this tournament, they have yet to play it. And being undefeated, that means blue side is their side. And not having played one single game of red, it's going to be interesting since Cloud9 have a similar record when on blue side.
You bring me back to the old memes of CLG that they only practice blue side strats, didn't have anything for the red. So it can actually throw you off your game if you've played so much on one side only. But you have to imagine that during scrims, no org has actually practiced on another side significantly. So I don't think this should hurt them a lot. It's just a funny thing to see their statistic go that way. But we already see that they are prepared to deal with the blind champions that Cloud9 has been preferring. The Lucian already off the table, so the Lilia combination might not be as strong, and the Udyr denied right away. You might be tempting Cloud9 to go into a Hecarim first pick that's going to be available. It probably will be traded for Lilia, and it's going to be Seraphine instead.
I was just about to say, so these two teams both ban Hecarim a lot. Seeing that go through, I actually wonder if either team is that well practiced. It's not like it's that difficult, but they've been banning it so often, regardless of which side. And normally teams have been banning Seraphine away from Cloud9 Academy, that flexibility it provides. Because Isles likes to play that support just as well as being able to toss that into mid lane into Copy's hands.
It comes at a cost, though. It will come at the price of the Hecarim, but we have seen what Seraphine can do in so many games across the globe, right? It doesn't matter really what role you play her in. She will hit that critical point in team fights, and if you're not incredibly cohesive at getting ahead early and shutting her down once the Moonstone is online, it seems like Seraphine just takes over the fight and can win you games single-handedly. So it's going to be hard engaged going into the Seraphine already, and
look at that.
Cloud9 has their work cut out for them, but I feel like Seraphine is just so strong right now. You don't even have to pair her with the Lilia if you want. There's still plenty of other junglers available. We could even see an Olaf that can be very powerful with the speed boost and dealing with the Hecarim and the Rel diving into you.
But I am curious to see what they want to opt for. I'd imagine holding on to that flexibility. Whoa! Kindred being locked in. And Kindred is, now this is a niche pick that we have seen a couple of times, but I can count on one hand how many times it's been picked throughout all these multitude of games throughout the tier 2s, tier 1s leading up to this Proving Grounds.
How many is that? I mean, it fits in your hand. It doesn't matter. What matters is...
I believe it is at 5, to be honest.
What matters is that Kindred is really good against dive. You just press R and all the diving damage just goes out the window. Now you can just reposition, heal up, re-engage, and you can win fights that way. So they have a solid game plan to pair with this, and it's a champion that will allow Schernfire to be very aggressive early on into Hecarim. So Hecarim obviously can run over Kindred, but if Kindred just gets a little bit ahead, if she can utilize those strong level 1s that we've shown earlier, then the Kindred can keep the Hecarim down, prevent him from getting too tanky early on, and suddenly you now have 2 carries at a range distance with a Seraphine. So the late game for Cloud9 is already looking very good.
But as we jump into the next part of bans, this identity that we are seeing drafted by Cloud9 Academy does feel a little bit different than what we have been so accustomed to. With that early aggression that we were highlighting before, this is much more them trying to index towards that mid game, towards that team fight, and you have No Org who are going straight into the dive. Everyone that they have gotten so far can dive into the backline.
Well, when you're coming in the best of 5 and you have such a similar draft every single time, starting the game off with a curveball is always a fine way to throw your opponent a little bit off on their heels here, because if this works out, now you're going to have to ban Seraphine every single time. Now you're going to have to be thinking about Kindred traded for Hecarim if you go on blue side now as No Org. So this is a draft that if it works for Cloud9 on blue, it has serious consequences for No Org's draft in the second go around. But they are equipping themselves on the side of No Org with plenty of tools that are cohesive with Engage, and that's always a positive thing for you to be able to have the initiative with these fights. Yes, it might look amazing that you have Seraphine and Kindred and all these ultimates, but if you're always at the mercy of the enemy engaging on you, it gives you way less opportunity to be proactive, and you're just dancing to the enemy's beat and hoping that you can outmaneuver.
As we get that Akali locked in, it has that flex opportunity still. Could be Viper, could be Fire, but it still goes into the same exact identity and the composition that has been drafted so far by No Org. And that is being able to dive, assassinate the backline before they can really ramp up that damage and be able to survive long enough. Ornn has been locked in by Darshan too. I know Smack was highlighting this on the desk, saying that this is something that he expected to see Darshan be able to plot, as it has been slowly working his way back into the meta.
I think these top laners respect themselves a lot more than the competition of however many games they've had to get here. They have both LCS experience, they know what each is capable of, and so the Ornn is a very safe tank right now with the Sion already being banned out. And I think the Akali is going to be going into the mid lane because it's saying, well, Seraphine is a fairly free lane here. I can get away with the Akali, and now I can assist with assassinating any squishies, because it's all about those really important targets in the backline. You don't care about the front line. If you can just kill the Jinx, the Kindred, and the Seraphine, you're going to win the fights. It's going to be a Sylas to steal some major ultimates magical, and there are some really good ones on the Cloud9 squad.
I was just about to say, we were just saying how we love Cloud9. They got this great anti-dive composition going for themselves. They don't have to worry about getting enough. Now there's a Sylas who can take your ults and use them against you, especially that Kindred ult, using Lamb's Respite to be able to make sure that it's like, oh, you think that you're going to be able to get this? Nah, we're fine too. We can keep this going for days.
These are going to be some long team fights. I hope you brought your water magical.
I got big old water right here. I am ready for this.
I mean, the cask is amazing, right? You have an AP ratio on that. You can have Seraphine ultimate on Sylas, which is very powerful. And then you have the Ornn ultimate on top of it. So this is going to be a champion that will really enable Viper. And it's a champ that is often cited as, it's not that strong in the meta, right? It's kind of trolling picking the champion, but it's a confidence pick. We've seen how powerful it can be just a few weeks ago in the LCS, how Perkz was playing it, being able to just affect the map and be so aggressive is something that catches your opponents off guard and just says, put the onus, the responsibility of carrying on me, and I will deliver. And I think that this is what Viper is saying with the Sylas last pick.
And you know something that you're talking about, the cask then, how it has great ratios for Sylas to take, but also what it does amazingly is it gets everyone off of Kindred ult. You use that if they're on top of it, splatter them apart, and then what good is that Kindred ult now if none of you are on top of it? We're getting into game number 1 here in the winners finals. Winner of this series moves on, gets a straight ticket to the grand finals, but the loser has to go down. They have another best of 5, and they'll face off against the winner of 100 Thieves Academy and Evil Genius Academy that we'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah, and we're going to find out, too, what Schernfire's plan is against Anda here. This matchup is what I'm looking out more than anything else. Sylas versus Ornn, Akali versus Seraphine. These are going to be just farm lanes. It's all about what Schernfire can do with these lanes. And I'm thinking utilizing copies, pressure in the mid lane to invade the Hecarim constantly will be his MO. And hasn't dropped any wards just yet, but just lingering around the area, hoping to see if No Org extends and goes for any invades. But it looks like we're just going to have a very quiet early game, at least for the starts.
Crumbs, I'm curious. Do you think that this Kindred's going to be able to invade and this early on like they normally like to play around? The problem I see is that Kindred kind of now in the meta really does need so much ramp up time. I know there was once that path that used to be able to go buff, immediate gank top, but I don't know if Surenfire is going to be able to do that to keep up against Anda.
So you don't get to pace as quickly as the Hecarim does. So being able to power farm and keep up with him early on isn't really what you're trying to do as the Kindred. So instead of trying to keep up with that, you look for these invades and just try to find where he is, and then that will allow you to not just try to keep up with farm, but just slow him down to your own pace. So he's just going to do red side right now, but I think that he will want to invade the Hecarim potentially in the top side, since both are going to be pathing up in the lane. You saw that the supports and ADs were helping their junglers out, so with a full clear, he can just catch the Hecarim out and control the Scuttle Crabs. I think that's enough for Kindred. As long as she can keep Hecarim slowed down, she'll buy enough time to get the stacks that she needs.
So at the moment, it's going to be a bit of time, but still we see if that's going to happen. I love these wards that were placed down by No Org. You see one right outside of their own red buff and another one right outside of Surenfire's blue, making sure that they can keep tabs on this Kindred and be able to note exactly, as you were saying, those potential invades that Surenfire might try to go for soon.
Well, the Hecarim is already paced much faster than her. He's already on 4 camps, and Surenfire is just now going for his 4th camp. So Anda's doing a great job here, clearing much faster than the Kindred, but the fight will still come down to the Scuttle Crab. So that's going to be where the first alteration will begin. But you see that top is already pushed on the side of Cloud9, and so is the mid lane. They did see Surenfire farming there, though, so they are aware that this top Scuttle will be fought for.
Barely. That ward almost timed out just in time for Surenfire to be able to get to his blue and not be spotted. But with that information, you can see that Anda looking to see if they can punish Darshan in the top lane, knowing the blue buff still has to be started. Viper is able to get a lot of damage on top of Darshan. Darshan still has the flash available. Flashing now, going to be knocked back by the charge. Not just yet, waiting for it, getting a lot of damage onto Darshan. He's still alive. Are they going to try to go for the stab? They will, and Anda will take first blood.
Ooh, so he had vision, but he really wanted to crash that wave. There were 3 minions left, was just so adamant about getting that pushed up, but gets punished for it quite severely. It's going to come at the cost of the 2 crabs for Surenfire, but that is so worth there on the side of No Org. I think that Darshan was just really eager to crash that wave, thinking that his jungler would be able to make it up to the top part of the map before the Hecarim could realistically get the kill. Maybe they had a 2v2, but Surenfire just was not close.
It's also a bit ambitious to hope that Kindred's going to be able to clear quick enough in the early game to be able to get there. It was a bit unfortunate for Darshan, so now it's TP for TP traded topside. Nothing too surprising there, but I want to see what Viper and Anda are going to be able to do with this lead. They now have found themselves in being able to crash the wave back towards Darshan and maybe even opening up the jungle of Surenfire a bit more.
Surenfire is going to have a tall task now because he has yet to base, and Anda's already on his 2nd clear with the Lucidity Boot, so he's going to be so much faster now, whereas Surenfire is going to be trying to clear his 2nd rotation of camps without having based, so that will give Anda a bit of speed on his own clear and should open him up to more ganks across the map. Look at what Viper is doing. He has been so relentless in bothering Surenfire's jungle. The initial ward that spotted him out, and now a pink ward and another one just in case he goes over the Gromp side and tries to hop over the wall. Or even if they just clear that control ward, they might not think there's a regular green ward there.
There's also a ward that was placed down by Fire in those Raptors, as you were highlighting. But the thing to me is, like, I'm looking at this, and normally Cloud9 Academy, they like to play a lot around bot lane, around King. Usually, if you look at Surenfire and where he tends to path, even though he does play aggressively into the opposing jungle, it usually tries to use priority bot lane to be able to get those leads to then invade alongside Copy. Here, they haven't really tried to play around the bot lane. Instead, it's just been all this focus trying to make sure that Viper's not going to be out of control on the Sylas.
And that he might just get out of control right now, though. He's probably about to hit 6, and Darshan is so dead.
A lot of damage on top of him. He's still alive, trying to go for the dash, but look who's nearby. Call the Forge God. Going to be able to get the double knock. I'm trying to wait it out. He's not going to be able to flash away. Kill coming in from Viper. Surenfire just too late to the party. Has to bail out of it, getting a little bit of damage, but he stayed way too long. Surenfire to get back underneath the turret. A little bit of damage on top of Enda, but he had to use his flash to escape.
It's the same thing happening again. The coordination between Anda and Viper are so much cleaner than between Schernfire and Darshan. Darshan a little bit too pushed up, thinking he has more time than he actually has. Oh, those chains would have killed.
Definitely would have. I thought that was death since Schernfire needs to get that ult if he wants to be able to survive those dives. Still only level 5 compared to double 6s on No Org in the top half of the map. And this is looking pretty bad for the side of Cloud9 Academy. Not able to keep up with Anda's pressure at this moment.
So Darshan is going to be able to hit level 6 just because he didn't share experience unlike Viper and Anda in the first clear, but it doesn't matter. He took so much damage, gets punted back here, and by the time he can get his ultimate off, yeah, they're knocked up, but with a great flash from Viper away from it, there's no chance that Schernfire can actually try to follow this up. And if that ultimate had landed from Hecarim, that would have been another kill. So they're flashing away these spells critically, but the fights and the loots of the Ornn are all going to the really strong duo that was highlighted time and time again when the conversation always drifted back to No Org.
That's why the desk was putting so much of a spotlight there, wasn't it? You can see how No Org have been able to play and put value and big. Normally talk about the top lane island. You know, it's always top laners. They don't have much attention coming in. It's a 1v1. This game, very different. Value, big. They're the ones always left on this island. Might even just be value soon enough once he's able to hold his own against King in the spot lane, allowing Big to be able to rotate elsewhere to help out.
Ooh, close trades there between Copy and Firefire. And it's one of those games where until the Rift Herald begins, we probably won't see Isles, King really participating in these fights. Same thing with Big and Value, because the top side has been so aggressive there that if you try to make a roam up there, you might just get 2v3'd, you might get TP'd on from the mid laners or roamed up, so it's quite risky to then start basing here and looking for a play on the top side of the map when it already has been so action-packed and dominated by No Org.
So I will say one thing. Even though Darshan has died twice, one thing that is always nice about having that tank topside. Doesn't matter how many times he dies, he's eventually going to be tanky. Tank builds, not too expensive, so I need to see No Org starting to translate that lead elsewhere. I like this, trying to see if they can punish maybe Schernfire, get more attention onto this Kindred so that they can't scale up and become that extra marksman that they need to really back up that damage.
I think he's hunting for Schernfire. No, just going to scare him away and back off, but that is already a lot of pressure on here. Here they go. Schernfire has no flash. Hecarim ulti is back up.
Just Lucian the blue buff. Might even be able to give it over to Viper. No, he's got to smite it so that way Schernfire doesn't secure it. But again, putting that pressure on the top half of the map, making sure there's not really much that Schernfire, that Darshan are going to be able to do for quite some time.
It's the ward, just the constant shove in, go back into the jungle, and with the wave pushing in from Darshan, he has to be really respectful of a gank coming out again. Yes, he's got flash, but now they have ultimates available, and Ornn's ultimate doesn't particularly get him out of trouble, so he needs to just hang back here and allow Viper to do whatever he wants with this wave.
No, Darshan doesn't seem to want to back out just yet. Wanting to be able to at least shove in and get some gold back, but now mid lane, nice flash body slam on top of Firefire. He cannot escape from those pixels, and he dies to Copy.
Copy has been doing a good job in this lane, constantly keeping Firefire low. We saw earlier how well he was trading against the Akali, and yes, the CS was fine, but now somebody actually shows up to respond. Isle burns his flash, his ignite, and it's not a problem because there has been no action in the bottom lane. They have only been farming, so the game revolving around the solo lanes is now starting to involve the supports as they just want to leave these AD carries farming and look for plays elsewhere.
Like I said, it's the bot lane island nowadays. It's not really needing their help on things too much. But top lane, double ult for ult, gonna be able to get the knock up. A lot of damage, body block.
Oh.
It's a kill solo by Darshan.
Oh man, Darshan already had the Bramble Vest and even Styles on him. Even does the emote and the auto cancel.
Beautiful.
With the Bramble Vest, the auto attacks from Viper did diminish his healing and probably was not expecting that. Yes, he has Conqueror, but when that healing gets really cut up, when you're so close to the Ornn this whole time, burning with the Bami Cinder, the fight is nowhere as close as you normally think.
And isn't that what I said about what I like about top lanes? About tanks? You don't really have to worry about getting killed too many times. You're still a tank. You can buy very cheap items and you're going to be able to fight back.
Those 2 kills suddenly seem like they were pretty meaningless because of exactly what you bring up, Magical. Now, the fact that Darshan gets a kill, has to feel terrible for Anda. I just went up there, I helped you, I got 2 kills for you, and you still died 1v1? Oh, I'm not going to go
Jungle
back there
diff.
to that lane anymore.
Yeah, that's when the top laner spams jungle diff in chat. I'm not too happy about that. But right now, we're starting to see a lot of these mythics being completed. You have that Turbo Chem tank coming in from Anda, but it's that Moonstone that I got my eyes on. Copy was the first one to complete a mythic, and you had already highlighted, once that's completed, it's not only going to be difficult to kill Copy, but now the rest of the team, when they finally group up for any skirmish, it's going to be that much more impactful.
Oh, it's going to be really impactful too, because you don't have control mages to apply a grievous wounds reliably. It's going to have to be value most likely. And so without having a reliable source at a distance to apply healing reduction against 5 champions that will be able to not only heal through their runes or itemization, but through the Moonstone, you can count on these team fights, the longer they go, being significantly in the favor of Cloud9. So No Org needs to be getting some kills right now to start getting some more gold on their side, because they need to do something about this. Otherwise, their items are just going to be their standard builds without having that accelerated money for the healing reduction that is going to be so much more important because of their champion's weaknesses in applying it.
And now that lane is frozen topside for Viper, it's going to be even more difficult to try to be able to contend against Darshan, who's keeping it right outside of his turret. So Anda, realizing that top lane's kind of bust, going to be able to pop the Eye of the Rift Herald into the bot lane so they can try to get a little bit of control around the Dragon Pit, maybe even posture for a dive, but they don't know where Surenfire is, and that would be really risky.
They had the Akali also shove out the mid lane. She has the control ward, not just on the right side, but on the pixel brush to be able to feint a dive here, but Cloud9 was so prepared. Not only did they have 2 members here, but Darshan had the teleport, and if Surenfire shows up, the ultimate from her is so good at counter-gunking.
Oh, Surenfire getting knocked back. Lamb's Respite was used. TP in. Are they going to try to get Surenfire? They pull him back in with the Magna Storm and the Fear to be able to get the kill on top of him, and they also lose Isles, trying to see if they can maybe win this fight, but the wrong way. Darshan not going to be able to get the knock if he needs to. Copy trying to be able to show up to help out King. King finally dies. It's a triple kill coming in from Fire. He's on a rampage, finally dying to the turret and helping him out, but you can see that Viper on the other wing, looking to see if he can join in and help out, make sure Value and can get out of the fight, but they've lost one. Double kill coming in from Darshan. This fight is all over the place. Copy finally going golden as Darshan has a little bit of damage. Might be stunned by the tracker Pell. Waiting it out, trying to see who they can get. Darshan is a tanky boy right now. He's got a level lead over Viper. The damage coming in from Copy to be able to take him down. One more auto attack is all it's needed. It's a rampage out of Darshan.
That fight was just so chaotic. It starts with catching Surenfire, but it lasts so long because the mid laners were not immediately there. Yes, Copy arrives very late, so the Moonstone Valley isn't there. The fight's still not over.
Fire TP in behind, dying quick enough to be able to respawn, but look at how low Value, Big are both at. They can't get through this meatball Darshan is, so they have to back out of that one and give up the second dragon.
It all started initially the attempt for the dive, then they backed off and went for the dragon, and when Cloud9 tried to contest it, the fight begun. Everybody went in for it, but Cloud9 ends up walking away victorious with that. They actually get the dragon and are starting the soul stack, which is so dangerous for the team fighting comp. They're gonna love the fact that now No Org has to really consider fighting them in the next dragon, and more importantly, if they lose that one out, the next. So let's see how this began, because I like this, how it begins with just not committing any ultimates. Then when Surenfire pops his is when the re-engage comes out with the Rel ultimate. They killed 2 members right away, but Darshan is so strong here, combined with Copy, who will join the fight much later. Silas is not here. He doesn't have the teleport. Ornn had it. The fact that Viper only now arrives is what lets these two do so much against No Org.
And honestly, this long drawn-out fight, it's kind of wild. I thought that Cloud9 were going to get completely routed because they lost those 2 members so fast. But like you said, Darshan, with Copy behind him, it's so difficult to kill him.
You don't have healing reduction yet, and it's going to be a long ways till that happens. So if Copy is there when people get caught right away, it's going to be way harder to actually win these fights. You already saw how 2 people could take down 4 if they were low. So No Org, at least they understand the critical members that they have to pick for. You got to kill Surenfire real quickly and King, but they need to be able to do this consistently. And now when the 5v5 begins, find Copy as well. Seraphine has to be target number 1.
She's got to, and that's always the rough thing. It's the Soraka syndrome, right? Where you try to focus onto more of the supportive champion, which means you're not focusing onto the damage, and they are doing all that damage to you because you can't actually kill that ADC. You can't really kill this jungler if you don't get rid of the source of all the healing and shielding.
That's why Kindred is so good here. You go after Seraphine.
Oh, no.
There's a Kindred. Oh, he's face checking.
Yeah, he is face checking. I don't think he thought anyone would be there. Had to flash away. And continuing the charge. Body slam. Going to be able to connect. Getting a lot of damage. Maggot Storm was used. Going to be able to charm up, but nice Lance Respect to be able to survive. Big on the other side. Trying to see if they can get the flash away, but it's going to be over the wall. Getting a huge charm, but it's not going to be enough. The Rocket only doing a little bit of damage over to Firefire. Still alive. Trying to be able to escape. Getting the heal from Value. Big's on the other side. But look at the flash body slam from Isles. Dodged over the wall with the Shuriken flip. Trying to see if he can trade it back around.
Whoa.
Isles is taken low, but he's still barely alive. Charge coming in to take him down. And now in the thick of it all with Viper nearby. They've taken down King, and that is No Org making a huge statement here in this game.
That was so well played and incredibly close. Initially indecisive about catching Schernfire if they wanted to burn everything, but once he flashed over the wall, they felt like they could actually go for it because Firefire was on the flank and King had no more mana. He was not able to use any more zaps. His Q was already out, so they saw an opportunity to just outplay Cloud9, and they really got it. They burned Copy's flash in that one as well. I'd love to see the replay on this one because that fight from No Org could have really been their undoing, and yet Firefire gets away with a sliver of health.
And this is where we have to highlight that Darshan, during this entire time, doesn't have TP. Viper barely gets it off cooldown at the beginning.
So Firefire comes in through the tri-brush there, and now you have the Kai'Sa being able to join up after Schernfire gets hit. So you got 3 people already fighting. They collapse onto Copy, and only now does King get to join the fight. But Firefire is in the Shroud, Kai'Sa is dealing all this damage, and now they can't chase. There's no reset on King. If just a single member died, a sliver of health, does Firefire survive, and then doesn't get hit by the barrel.
That was single digits there, Crumb. Single digits that Firefire was able to escape the fight long enough for Viper to dodge away from the Call of the Forge God from Darshan. If you watch the minimap, he was doing his best to make sure he escaped any knowledge of Darshan so he could TP in there, so they could then recollapse on top of him. But without Viper, you don't have that cleanup. You don't have Firefire barely escaping there.
And you also have to credit Anda being able to engage on that one and survive.
Very
It's
true.
the W, that mounting dread out of him. The no cap healing on the Hecarim actually keeps him alive and allows him to distract members and take out the Gragas while the rest of the crew collapses. But now we're going to come back to another fight. Firefire will have teleport, but this dragon fight will definitely be fought for. You see the position where No Org is at. You've got Viper in the bottom lane, can steal an ultimate. He's already looking for the flank, just making sure that they can collapse onto Copy, most likely because he and Schernfire do not have flash, the critical members that keep this Cloud9 comp alive.
You can see it as they've all grouped up together, this death ball that they work so well with one another, especially Copy, to be able to heal them all up throughout it all. They're trying to make sure they can get themselves within soul point. Popping the eye, that way they can immediately turn to try to see if they can grab onto the Cloud Dragon, but No Org don't want to relent too easily. They want to make sure that Cloud9 cannot get these necessary tools to continue to scale into this game.
Well, they just backed off here, and now they're just going to concede this dragon. This is already too
But look
late.
at the TP.
They're going.
They're trying to see if they can get the TP in from Firefire. They've got the engage, though. It's on top of Big. He's got a lot of damage, having to use the Ferromancy to be able to escape. Call of the Forge God is going to be used and get the knock up in the backline, but they forgot about Firefire. He's in the middle of all, on top of Isles. He wants to be able to get the perfect execution on top of Cloud9. Darshan barely trying to get himself away, but they should be able to chase him down, especially Firefire. He's already got a double. They've got the damage. You're not taking it anymore. He's shut down.
They committed everything to take out Big, and that gave the opportunity, the signal for Viper and Firefire to immediately dive alongside Anda. When all your spells get burned on the tank, yes, he jumps out and doesn't even get the ultimate, but now the assassins have free reign on your backline. The dash, the slam from Gragas, that's the cue. They go after the carries, and they land a huge ultimate onto both carries. I believe that was just the Hecarim ultimate fearing both carries. They were all clumped up there. That's what happens when you commit so many of your spells on the members that aren't as important to keeping your carries alive. A great heads-up play from No Org. Yes, immediately losing a member, but seeing that the opportunity for engage was wide open.
Isn't that how you were talking about it being in Champions Select, where we looked at this composition Cloud9 had drafted? It's great for long, drawn-out fights that are going to be able to keep themselves scaling up, but that's not a No-Orgs. No-Orgs trying to assassinate the backline as fast as humanly possible.
And they're doing a really good job at it, too. The coordination they showed there with the teleport flank at the same time that Cloud9 committed for the Dragon was spot on. They saw that this was the window. Cloud9 had already committed their position, had backed off from River, and instead of choosing to draw out the fight, were committing to an engage right at the Dragon. I think Big might be getting caught out. Does have Flash.
They're trying to get him. They have a lot of damage coming in from Turnfire. Flash going to be used with the Encore, too. But they're going to be able to barely escape this one, as you can see. No-Org, once again, Cloud9 committing so much trying to kill Big with the Lambs right on top of Turnfire, TP in. But look at Firefire once more into the backline, being able to distract Copy all the time, so he can dive right on top of him yet again. The tanks are doing their best on the other side, trying to see if they can keep them away. But that's just Firefire wanting to see if he can jump on top of King. They execute him. Darshan chased away as they get an ace yet again.
That was the deja vu of the Dragon fight. Burn everything for King, overextend for him, and you expose yourself completely to No-Orgs carries who just demolished the backline. There is nothing that they could have done there. So many hops over the walls between the Kaisa, the Akali, and the Sylas that they just dismantled Cloud9. And No-Org is making a statement in this opening game. This is just a slaughter now, Magical. It is 10,000 gold up on the team that has no org, quite literally.
They might not have no org, but they are definitely here to try to get one, because they are absolutely tearing apart this first game against the #1 Academy team. We already highlighted, no org are the #1 amateur team. This is the most winningest amateur team that we've seen in recent history, and you can see from this replay, from this play, how they're able to punish an overextension from Cloud9.
When Copy burns his ultimate, they see the easy angle onto Schernfire, and now Firefire's coming in from the back. Jumps onto 2 carries, beautiful positioning. Now Sylas has a Seraphine ultimate that can use it on the tanks, while Value just demolishes them. They saw the terrain and the advantages that it presented for their composition, and they just dismantled Cloud9 here, who now just have to completely turtle, but this comp is not going to be able to really do a whole lot at this stage in the game. They probably have to give up these turrets because a dive could easily come. Look at Viper. He has an Ornn ultimate and is on the side. They have to remain grouped and bleed out from the side lanes. Akali's already pushing the sides. Once they spread out, it's exactly the same opportunity that Anda and the rest of No-Org have seen. It's an immediate trigger to engage.
And right now, Cloud9 don't really have any options except to let this happen. They have to wait it out. Schernfire will be able to get a little bit of damage onto Anda inside of his own jungle, but it's bleeding out these leads, bleeding out gold towards No-Org. They continue to get more into their pockets that they'll be able to spend. You can see in the inventories of so many of these members having 2 completed items. I love that Magi's from Firefire on this Akali, just to make sure that he can continue to scale when they have these fights that have been working out so beautifully for them.
He had the 10 stacks of the Dark Seal. The fights have been going so well. He's got a 700 gold bounty. Why not? Especially game 1. Send the message. Send the message. Let them know that you're going to be able to get that fully stacked. And seeing that the enemy did that to you, it's just seeing that, man, they're really confident against us.
Oh, stolen ult. Not going to be able to connect. They're going to be able to get the belly flop on top of Anda, but it was also they can get that tier 2 in the mid lane. More gold into No-Org's pockets, continuing to push in Cloud9 into their own base, making sure they have nothing they can play around, waiting it out as best as possible. Right now, Firefire is 2 levels up Darshan. He's 1v3.
Wow.
That damage onto Schernfire is insane. He has the perfect execution, waits it out. Shuriken flip, does he go for it? Come on, do it. He doesn't do it. He backs off because he knows his team is bot lane taking an inhibitor turret.
No-Org is not interested in these team fights right now. With the Baron, they are so strong in the side lanes. No member of Cloud9 can hold the 1v1s, let alone try to 1v2 them with the jungle, clearly with how much damage the Akali and the Sylas are doing right now. So as long as they use this Baron with the side lanes effectively, they're able to get much more gold, and they've done so now. They've cracked the base, and even now Value is hitting the tier 3 in the mid lane. The likely reset, though, they can back off here and just go for the dragon, and that's the opportunity Cloud9 wants, but without the Ornn ultimate here and Isles burning a flash to get a body bop engage, they're just not going to get the fight they want.
Well, now that the Red Bull power play is over, they don't have that Baron anymore for No Org. They're gonna back out, play it patiently. Even though they're able to expose one inhibitor, they're playing this one so smart, and I gotta appreciate that. Even if I like the flashy plays, the 1v3, try to dive inside of them anyways, they're playing it smart. They don't want to give up this first game, not when they have such a commanding lead.
Because that's exactly what happens, right? You give up that fight in the base, and now the enemy team can get much more gold. They're resetting, they're taking their jungle out, and for no gain whatsoever. You're not entirely pushing here to end this game because you don't have the range to really hammer away at these turrets. You don't have the control mages that can zone from afar and CC you like an Orianna or a Victor. You only have the Kai'Sa, so you need to draw Cloud9 out. You want them to come to Dragon to try to fight you. You want them to walk into Baron Vision and then get these fights. So Cloud9 need to recognize that that is where No Org will attack them, because No Org is definitely playing with the knowledge that that is what they want, and that is where they want to fight Cloud9.
Well, look right now at the inventories for both teams. You start seeing a lot of these completed items coming through, but there's a literal item lead for every single member on the side of No Org, except for that bot lane, except for the supports, because it's just supports. That's how much of a commanding lead you've got for No Org. And I really do want to call out this Night Harvester from Firefire. Normally, we've been seeing so much of that Void Maker used to try to see if you're going to be able to get more of the damage throughout the fight. But that's not how they can play this. They can't play a drawn-out fight against this composition that Cloud9 have drafted for themselves. They need to continue to burst them.
They really do, and he might be taking some inspiration from Doinby here, as he played that in the LPL finals. But we're going to see Cloud9, though, linger around. They're finally grouped.
Oh, flashing. Oh, what happened to Sharpfire? He got blown up. And look in the back line. Call of the Forge God gets the knock up on top of Firefire with the Shuriken flip. Firefire does not want to follow it up just yet, but they got the kill. They got the inhibitor. They can bail out of there and, again, try to play around that Baron.
They drew them out. They're looking for an engage, though, but who can really follow this up? No one.
Nobody. And they tried to see if they can collapse onto Big again. They need to try to see if they can burst down Firefire, get rid of those stacks of Magi's. Even Value is a valuable target that they have not been able to collapse on.
When Cloud9 left their base, they were in entirely enemy territory there, because the second that he crept up there, they just flashed on him, immediately popping. I don't think Akali was even there.
King.
Oh, King.
King, the flash in, flashed away, onslaught of shadows, but Isles on the other side, trying to see if he can at least body block. It's a stolen ult. Class could be used, but not going to. Instead, Viper's going to use that so they can zone control the Baron once more.
It's still a win, though. You got the Jinx Flash. Now you're dealing with an Akali that has 700 gold bounty, Magi stacks for the movement speed, as Zhonya's, Night Harvester, Lich Bane, and you don't have a single piece of magic resistance. Here she goes.
Where's the rocket? You gotta go for the YOLO rocket here, King. Nobody's blocking you. Try to throw it out. You throw it towards Firefire instead of the Baron, and it's already secured by Anda with the fight coming in on top of Big, finally dying in the fight with Anda in the backline on top of him. Onslaught Shadow's not gonna be used this time because he can't. He dies in the fight trying to escape. No Org might have got themselves the Baron, but they do lose 2 in the process.
It buys some time for Cloud9, so with this Baron being taken off the map and the losses from No Org's team, I don't think they're going to be able to go for much more here. They could try to go for that inhibitor in the mid and top, but remember, they don't want to be sieging. They want to be splitting up the map, so with only these members alive, that map split is going to be a lot harder to do, and I think Cloud9 has just bought a little bit more time, but it's still a monumental task to claw themselves out of this game. And we're going to see how this started again, because Spyfire is looking for some fight here, misses the initial Q, has to get out when everybody else is collapsing. You could have said to angle the ultimate into the Baron for sure. I think that teams are catching on to the power of Jinx. Both had value, right? Take the Baron, take the 700 gold bounty. Well, chose one. It got blocked anyways. I think Big was positioned to block the Baron anyhow, so I don't blame King too much for that one. But they still have to now survive the second weathering of the Baron Storm.
And it's going to be difficult. This Red Bull Baron power play coming in once more for No Org. They're pushing back in minions. They got supers in the bot lane so they can focus on top and mid. Waiting it out. Just trying to see if they can catch someone like Sharpfire off guard once more and blow him up before the Lancer Spike can even come out.
All right, so you've got Value, Firefire, and Viper pushing out the Baron then. With Viper being down here and no inhibitor, up to be taken. All he's doing is just keeping Darshan down here and away from the rest of the squad. And the waves aren't particularly synchronized, and that's going to hurt NoOrg's chances of actually cracking this, because the top lane turret crashes the minion waves. Yes, Fire gets a little bit of damage though, and now mid lane shows up, so they have to back away, and suddenly they just blew it wide open.
Jerk and flip. Look at the damage on top of King every single time. And it was Soul and Call of the Forge God waiting out Lamb's Respite so they can get the second inhibitor. Dive in with Perks Execution, looking for the Call of the Forge God coming back in from Darshan. Going to be able to get the double, triple knockup, but nobody can follow up on top. Cloud9 Academy have to watch in horror as they lose their third and final inhibitor with Baron on top of the heads of NoOrg. They're going to push them right to these next inserts. TP's coming in from Fire. They're looking to take game one with the Magnet Storm coming in the back line. Big has to flash out, but they've got Fire and blown him up godlike with a huge veer coming in. They've taken out King, Cloud9 Academy, and then forced back into the base by the best in amateur. They've got game one in the bag, even though they lose Viper at the tail end of it. It doesn't matter. They've got the fight. They've got Fire still alive with the Magi stacks, getting damage on top. Nexus to full. Game one for NoOrg.
What a statement there out of NoOrg. They came in with a game plan that was executed much better than Cloud9's here. The responsibility of carrying between Viper and Fire was held in every regard. Bounties across the board. They played to the top lane early, translated those leads to big fights into the bottom. They had strong flanks, just all-around great game out of them. Whereas for Cloud9, I think they're going to have to scrap this plan altogether and put more threats on this team, because the double threat composition did not work out at all. They needed more options.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It was different from what we expected out of Cloud9 Academy. We were expecting them to look for these early game plays. Normally, that's how they even draft. This time around, they wanted to scale. They wanted to wait it out, but they never got the chance because NoOrg never relented.
They were hoping that the Kindred Ultimate and Seraphine would keep their carries alive, but when the mobility was so huge out of the side of NoOrg, those spells barely matter. And if they did, you've got a Sylas who also has your ultimate, so you just buffed up their composition. I think that last pick for Viper was really huge there for this game, because it made those team fights and the way you approach it so much harder to think about, because they also had a Seraphine ultimate or a cask to plop you out or keep you locked down.
And with that, NoOrg land the first blow in this upper bracket in the winners finals here. Taking that, but it's still a best of 5. They still have more time for both teams to be able to regroup themselves, find out what's going to happen. We're going to toss it to a break. When we come back, our analysts will dissect that win.
Welcome back to the LCS Proving Grounds presented by Verizon. I'm still here with my analysts. We got Kelsey Moser, we got Smacks here to break down game number 1. No Org came out on top, and I think we got to start at the top of the game with the draft. Kelsey, C9A had been making sound waves all across the season with their Seraphine, and they brought her out to play today.
I really dislike first pick Seraphine. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think she ends up being super punishable in lane, and there are a lot of compositions that you can build to respond to her. C9 Academy themselves in the Academy regular season have played things like Yone or Assassins into Seraphine that managed to get into the backline and kill her before she can have an impact on the game. And we see No Org actually taking a play out of that book, picking the Akali, which despite the fact that Akali is only 1 and 2 now in Proving Grounds overall, the fact that she's so underplayed and underappreciated is really highlighted in this game just because of the amount of devastation she can have. So I really like that No Org expected the Seraphine, came in with a clear plan. There's no answer to the sideline pressure coming out of the Akali and the Sylas. And for me, looking at this, even though a lot of people come out and they'll say, Seraphine really strong, solid combination with Kindred, this looked like a one red side draft from my perspective.
Yeah, and that red side ended up working out very well for No Org, not just getting the victory, but even looking at the laning phase, Akali feeling fairly comfortable. But I do want to bring some of the conversation to another part of the map. Smacks, you both predicted it here today that the top lane is where the action would be kicking off.
And that's exactly where it did for No Org, especially up there. We know this is exactly how Viper and Anda like to play, so we're not surprised at all to see it here today in game number 1, but still, it still just worked out so well. Cloud9 have to know this is going to happen, but Darshan, even on this Ornn, still gets punished heavily up here. Anda makes a second appearance up there, gets another kill onto Darshan, and sets the snowball rolling down the hill for Viper up there. And you can see Surenfire, he shows up, he's a little bit late to the party, but, Darshan, he does get his retribution kill. He does get a solo kill up there in response, so he does show us that he is still very capable of finding those advantages up there on this Ornn against Sylas, and with that Bramble Vest as well, he's reducing all the healing in the 1v1. It looked very nice, but the damage had already been done. It already happened. We already have Anda very ahead with those 2 kills, and we saw that snowball all throughout the rest of the game.
It's no surprise to see from Darshan moments like that, a well-executed 1v1 building into the specific matchup. But in the end, despite some early-ish leads for Cloud9 in terms of Drakes, it was No Org that managed to keep the pressure going. Kelsey, let's talk about the fights that really kicked it off towards their victory.
Yeah, again, one of the biggest things is we saw Akali take the bot turret. They translate that into control of the bot river. And immediately, as soon as Surenfire is face checking, he's forced to blow the ult. And this is a situation where after that, there's not a lot of protection coming onto the C9 carries. We didn't see C9, they opted for the Kindred instead of the Thresh to try to provide that sort of protection, which you usually see Thresh giving Jinx more space to make the fights happen. And it was just easy for No Org to look for angles from all sides because, again, you're not getting any way to control the vision. You're not getting any way to force those guys out of the fights. And they are able to just clean it up really easily with Akali, with Sylas coming from all directions and getting to those backline carries.
And that fight was the beginning of the rest of the fights being won by No Org as well. And just a little bit of health bar between Fire living and dying does mean that he gets to keep that Akali momentum going and keep those Magi stacks, keep the bounty up, and become that late game snowballing Akali that the patches have really designed her to be. She is much more favored on the scaling aspect of the game with the recent changes to the Shuriken flip.
I do want to look a bit on the Cloud9 side with that. Smacks, you're talking about the strengths that really showed up for No Org, but you also noted when we were talking about it, you're waiting to see what the Kindred would do. Was not effective in this case. We have found out that Cloud9 Academy have selected blue sides with no subs. Smacks, what would you like to see change differently from them going into game number 2?
Well, I think this Kindred is not a very contested pick unless we unless we don't know what's going on in the scrims with these two teams, maybe Kindred is just 8-0 in these scrims and we have no idea. But my guess is that that's not the case, and my guess is that Cloud9 could do with an earlier support pick, especially if Big is going to be locking in this rel earlier on. You can lock in things like the Alistar, like the Thresh that Kelsey mentioned, and not have that support pool pinched a little bit, and you still give a Jinx, if that's what they're going for, a little bit more protection than that of the Gragas.
From my perspective, I'd like to see a little bit more agency given to King, picking some champions that are a little bit more independently mobile, like the Kai'Sa or the Tristana, if they're available, and less of a focus on just pure front to back, because they really had no answer to the sideline pressure. And if we're bringing it back to the top of the day when we talked about the jungle matchup being so strong, I think the Kindred is just not enabling Schernfire to look his best. So it just really looks like Andy is the uncontested monster so far in game one, and I really want to see them bring that back and enable Schernfire a bit more.
You both did predict that Cloud9 Academy would come out on top today. So I know you're also trying to predict those scores a little bit here. And we all want more games to happen. No Org did say yes to victory in game number 1 of this series. But when we return, we'll find out if Cloud9 Academy do have the answer. Game number 2 after this. Stay tuned.